an ancient economic ban, predicted how modern fiat interest physically alters your brain chemistry. Every time you sign a loan document, you systematically downregulate your brain's reward center. Are you unconsciously trapped in this ancient neurological feedback loop right now? Drop a comment. Did anyone actually warn you about this setup? The text of the Quran explicitly bans all forms of fixed interest. Modern neuroeconomists just figured out why this ban protects human decision-making systems. Traditional finance claims that interest charging creates necessary market efficiency. Behavioral data proves it actually triggers profound cognitive blindness to risk. When money creates money without real labor, your brain strips away value. Your striatum fires wildly at the thought of unearned compounding gains. This neural misfire forces you to overvalue future abstract promises over current reality. You begin to trade your biological survival instincts for digital illusions. The ancient text treated this psychological shift as a severe societal infection. Western financial institutions built their entire empire on this precise blind spot. Hold on. Let's trace how a credit card statement mimics a prehistoric trap. When you borrow capital with interest, your brain interprets it as free resources. The ancient world knew that unearned abundance breaks your evolutionary survival drive. Your dopamine path gets hijacked by instant gratification with delayed invisible penalties. That's how systemic debt bubbles grow completely unchecked by human logic. You stop calculating the actual mathematical cost of your immediate desires. The brain normalizes continuous debt servitude as standard economic health. Look at how subprime markets collapsed under this exact psychological weight. Millions of people genuinely believed their paper assets would compound forever. They couldn't perceive the structural rot hidden inside the ledger books. This matches exactly what historical scriptures warned about centuries ago. Interest acts as a slow economic neurotoxin within the collective marketplace. It causes investors to misprice risk on a massive catastrophic scale. The system forces you to pay for tomorrow's survival using today's peace. Tell me below. How many open loans are currently draining your focus? The ancient Riba ban wasn't a rigid moral rule for spiritual salvation. It was a highly advanced empirical formula for protecting group cognitive sovereignty. When you remove interest, capital must actively participate in real risk. Investors have to back genuine human production instead of passive extractions. If you're ready to exit the 99% trap and join the 1% who see the code, hit subscribe. We decode a new layer every week. This shift forces your frontal lobe to evaluate reality with extreme accuracy. You can't just hide behind a guaranteed balance sheet of compounding interest. Think about how modern venture capital operates under profit and loss sharing models. That's the exact functional equivalent of ancient equity-based transaction mandates. It ties individual survival directly to real tangible wealth creation loops. When interest enters the equation, that natural feedback loop breaks instantly. The lender assumes zero real-world operational responsibility for the enterprise. They merely extract a compounding tax from the worker's psychological energy. This structural asymmetry breeds deep resentment and eventual market systemic failure. Think about it. The borrower carries the entire weight of physical reality and market volatility. The lender sits back and relies on an abstract mathematical equation. This creates a dangerous divergence between real physical goods and financial claims. That's why every major fiat system eventually eats itself from within. The paper claims multiply much faster than human hands can ever produce. Your brain can't easily comprehend this geometric expansion of modern debt. We evolved to understand linear growth like crops and physical structures. Exponential interest curves completely break our default cognitive forecasting abilities. You assume a small percentage rate won't destroy your long-term independence. But math doesn't care about your optimistic biological assumptions or feelings. The compounding loop accumulates silently until it owns your entire attention span. You become a cognitive prisoner to your own past consumption choices. That's the ultimate slavery system, disguised as modern personal financial freedom. The ancient writers saw this endgame with absolute mathematical clarity. Have you ever noticed how anxiety scales with your monthly debt obligations? Share your experience. It's a literal chemical reaction happening inside your amygdala every day. Chronic debt floods your nervous system with constant low-level cortisol production. This cortisol spike actively damages your capacity for long-term strategic planning. You become reactive, short-sighted, and easily manipulated by market narratives. The financial elite require a population trapped in this exact survival state. A debt-free individual possesses too much mental bandwidth to be easily controlled. They can choose to walk away from extractive economic systems at will. They can fund alternative infrastructure without asking permission from central banks. The Riba ban was designed to preserve this exact communal bargaining power. If you're ready to exit the 99% trap and join the 1% who see the code, hit subscribe. We decode a new layer every week. It prevented a small class of lenders from owning the entire population's future. Look closer at the language used in old scriptural prohibitions. Lenders who deal in usury are described as standing like madmen. This is a perfect clinical description of severe neurological reward addiction. Wait, the addict needs more digital digits to feel the same baseline safety. They become completely detached from the physical limitations of our natural world. They print credit out of thin air and call it economic progress. Meanwhile, the physical worker burns real biological calories to pay that interest. This wealth extraction mechanism creates an unsustainable thermodynamic imbalance in society. The energy flows entirely upward while the risk stays squarely at the bottom. Modern central banking has perfected this ancient extractive psychological model. They manipulate the price of time by setting arbitrary interest rates. When interest rates are artificially low, your brain's risk filters turn off entirely. You misallocate capital into useless projects because money feels completely free. Then the cycle flips, rates rise, and the trap snaps shut on you. The lenders sweep in and buy physical assets for pennies on the dollar. This scriptural insight shows that financial history is just one continuous psychological cycle. The rules haven't changed since the days of ancient Babylon and Rome. Do you believe central banks intentionally engineer these boom and bust cycles? Let me know. To break free, you must first change your entire relationship with capital. Stop viewing money as an independent tool that generates its own value. Money is merely a receipt for past human energy and focused time. If it's not tied to actual production, it's a structural illusion. Rejecting interest-based consumer vehicles allows your brain's reward center to reset completely. You begin to demand true equity and real ownership in your ventures. You stop letting external entities lease out your future cognitive capacity. The ancient scriptures weren't trying to limit your personal financial abundance. They were trying to prevent you from becoming a battery for someone else's matrix. Real wealth is the absolute control over your own daily attention span. When you owe nothing, the modern economic matrix loses all its leverage over you. You can finally think clearly without the background noise of compounding debt anxiety. That's the ultimate forbidden truth the financial system tries to obscure. They want you calculating interest payments instead of building autonomous parallel systems. Let that sink in. The ancient texts contain the exact empirical frameworks for total financial sovereignty. We just need to decode them through the lens of modern neuroeconomics. Look at how community-pooled risk outperformed individual debt structures in historical crises. When a whole tribe shares the downside, systemic collapse becomes mathematically impossible. No single individual is crushed under the weight of an unpayable ledger balance. The collective incentive remains aligned toward real physical growth and human progress. Compare that to our current hyper-isolated, debt-ridden Western consumer society. We're more connected digitally, but entirely fractured economically and psychologically. Everyone is quietly fighting their own invisible battle against a personal balance sheet. This isolation prevents the formation of strong, independent, autonomous local networks. It keeps the population weak, compliant, and totally dependent on state intervention. The ancient Riba ban was essentially a highly strategic economic self-defense mechanism. It kept the community's assets circulating internally instead of leaking to centralized syndicates. By keeping money close to labor, they preserved absolute local freedom. Are you ready to completely restructure your personal balance sheet based on this ancient law? It requires a massive shift away from conventional retail banking logic. You have to stop chasing easy, unearned yields through predatory mechanisms. Focus entirely on building direct, high-conviction value in the physical world. Invest in skills, hard assets, and genuine revenue-sharing economic partnerships. That's how you build true generational resilience against the coming debt reset. The current global monetary architecture is approaching its absolute mathematical limit. The mountain of unpayable global interest cannot be sustained by physical reality much longer. A massive systemic correction is already baked into the macroeconomic code. Those who understand the ancient neuroeconomic laws will survive the transition completely unscathed. They're already positioned outside the blast radius of the compounding debt bomb. They don't rely on central bank promises or digital fiat illusions for survival. They operate on the timeless principles of tangible production and shared risk. This isn't just theory. It's a proven historical law of human organization. Every civilization that ignored this rule ended up buried under its own debts. If you're ready to exit the 99% trap and join the 1% who see the code, hit subscribe. We decode a new layer every week. The ruins of ancient empires are literal monuments to unpayable compounding interest. We're simply watching the exact same movie play out on high-speed digital networks. The technology changes, but human neurobiology remains exactly the same. Your brain still craves the illusion of effortless, unearned, immediate resource accumulation. But nature always demands an equal and opposite physical payment eventually. You can't cheat the basic thermodynamic laws of the global economic system. True wealth cannot be generated by a mere keystroke in a banking terminal. It must be forged through focused attention, strategic risk, and raw human labor. Once you internalize this reality, your financial decisions become completely bulletproof. Look closer. Look at the small business owners trapped in endless high-interest merchant cash advances. They work 80 hours a week just to feed the banking algorithm. Their creative energy is completely drained by a spreadsheet they didn't write. This is the exact opposite of human flourishing and cognitive optimization. The ancient scriptures sought to protect your creative spark from this extraction. They recognize that your mind is the ultimate high-value asset on Earth. It shouldn't be leased out to cover the interest on depreciating consumer toys. Break the cycle by refusing to participate in one-sided risk arrangements. Demand a seat at the table where profit and loss are shared equally. This simple shift completely reconfigures how your brain processes economic opportunities. You stop looking for quick shortcuts and start scanning for deep systemic value. You become an elite economic operator, aligned with natural evolutionary laws. The financial system wants you to think this approach is completely impossible today. They want you to believe that debt is an inescapable tax on existence. Do you think it's possible to live entirely debt-free in our current economy? Thousands of sovereign operators are doing it quietly outside the mainstream gaze. They use alternative asset classes to store value without central bank counterparty risk. They form private capital networks based on mutual benefit and shared equity models. They're reviving the ancient scriptural mechanics under modern high-tech frameworks. This is the real cutting-edge frontier of human financial evolution. It's the synthesis of timeless historical observation and advanced modern cognitive science. By eliminating Riba, you restore the natural equilibrium to your neural architecture. Your striatum stops chasing the phantom dopamine of unearned interest gains. Your prefrontal cortex regains absolute control over your long-term wealth strategy. You no longer panic when the mainstream financial headlines scream about inflation. You know your wealth is anchored in real-world utility and collective production. The coming market collapse will simply wash away the paper illusions of interest. The physical infrastructure and real assets will remain exactly where they are. Those who own the equity will inherit the next iteration of the world. Don't wait for the system to crash before you start changing your habits. Begin auditing your current financial liabilities with cold clinical precision tonight. Identify every single line item where you're paying a compounding interest tax. Create an aggressive, high-priority plan to eliminate those cognitive drains immediately. Every dollar of debt you kill is a piece of your sovereignty reclaimed. You're buying back your biological focus from the centralized extraction engine. This is the most high-leverage investment you can make right now. The ancient scriptures provided the diagnosis. Modern neuroeconomics provides the proof. The choice to remain a battery or become a sovereign operator is yours. Align your capital with real human value and escape the debt loop permanently. The ultimate financial asymmetry is a clear mind operating with zero external liabilities. That's how you build an empire that survives any modern economic storm. The ancient datasets have successfully predicted every major global financial collapse. Modern neuroeconomics just gave us the scientific proof behind their timeless economic warning. If you're ready to exit the 99% trap and join the 1% who see the code, hit subscribe. We decode a new layer every week. The next systemic shift will reward those who hold real-world, collateralized equity. The mathematical debt loop is closing faster than the market realizes right now. Will you be holding real assets or unpayable digital claims when the clock hits zero?